Welcome back to the Filipino FM channel, your home for Filipino Football Manager content. In this video, I am putting the English national team and the Philippines national team into the English Premier Division to see how they will do over the course of 5 seasons. So here I have England and the Philippines. I have them replacing Southampton and Bournemouth in the game. So Southampton, who finished 20th place in real life this season, and Bournemouth, who is predicted to finish 20th place in the game. So I figured they would be two good teams to fill out. So here is the English national team. It's the same players in the English national team to start Football Manager 2023. So of course, the big players in the team, you have your Harry Kane, you have your Mason Mount, Phil Foden, Bukayo Saka, Reece James, Jordan Pickford in goal. This is a really good team. And I think one of the big things for the English national team is not only is this a really good team, especially in Football Manager where English players are a little bit OP. You have Harry Kane, who's a phenomenal goal scorer, someone like Ward-Prowse, who's a really excellent from free kicks, and of course, Declan Rice, Mason Mount, Sterling, Phil Foden, etc. You also have, again, those young players like Foden, Sterling, Reece James, Rice, who are going to develop. So not only is this England team excellent, not only do they have a way to grow and become better throughout the save, but it also means they're weakening some of their English Premier Division rivals. I mean, you're taking Everton's goalkeeper off them. You're taking the best striker, arguably, maybe not Holland, in the English Premier Division off of Tottenham. You're taking a fantastic player in Declan Rice. You're taking James, Foden, Saka, three really important players for some top sides in the EPL off those teams, and you're putting them all in one team. So I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing England win the English Premier Division title in this 5-season span. And if not, I'm certainly expecting them to at least make Europe and definitely at some point make the Champions League. And on the flip side, we have the Philippines, who are definitely not as good as England. I worry a little bit about the Philippines. I'm going to be honest, I think they're probably going to get relegated. Some of the important players in this team are going to be Neil Etheridge, who will likely be the starting goalkeeper. He has a 111 current ability. I think he actually might have one of the highest current abilities in the game. He, of course, has played in the English Premier Division before for Cardiff. He played 38 matches for them in the 2018-19 season. But other really good players, Garrett Holtman on the left side will be good. He can play all on the left side. He has excellent physical attributes, so I'm sure they'll be able to utilize that. John Patrick Strauss is arguably the best player. He plays in the central midfield. He's probably the most well-rounded player on this Filipino team. And lastly, we have Oscar Arribas, a very well-rounded player, but he's only 23 years old, so he still has some room to grow. He was playing in Malaysia, but he might be able to make the step up as far as he's 114 going to 129. He might be able to make the step up as far as being able to play in England, but I probably think these players as a whole are probably more Championship League One quality. So in 5 seasons, I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Philippines settle around that point. And the last thing is I've given the Philippines and England a global transfer ban for those 5 seasons. So we can see it here for Philippines, the transfer ban until August 1st, 2027. And we see the same thing here for England with that same global transfer ban. And this is so that they have to utilize the national teams at the beginning of the game. They can't sign players from outside, so the Philippines can't sign other players who are not Filipino. English players can't sign players outside the national team. In this way, we see how those players will actually do over the course of 5 seasons in the EPL. So I'm going to simulate forward halfway through. So let's go to 3 seasons into the future and see how they're doing then. So see you in a little bit. Welcome back. We are 3 seasons into the future. Unfortunately, 3 seasons into the future, I don't see the Philippines here, but we still have England. So let's see how they've done in the past 3 seasons. So in the last season, they finished 4th and have made the Champions League. I am not surprised there. We are definitely expecting them to make the Champions League at some point. But I'll tell you what, I think they can get closer to the title. The previous season, finishing 7th. That's a little disappointing. But they did make the Champions League, so that suggests that they won some European competition. And then finally, they finished 5th in the first season. So, oh no, the Philippines. finished on 3 points in the first season with 3 draws and 35 losses. Ooh, that's not really good. But sure enough, for England, they were in the Champions League because they won the Europa League and they won the Super Cup as well. So that bodes pretty well. Let's see how they did as far as their schedule is concerned from season one. So this was England in season one. Overall, pretty solid season, but the highlight being a Carabao Cup final victory for England. I'm actually surprised they haven't won more trophies, all things considered. But after season one, winning the Carabao Cup final, that brought them into the Europa League, where they beat Arsenal in the Europa League final on penalties. England breaking their curse on penalties against their own clubs. That's fantastic. They did lose in the FA Cup fourth round to Arsenal as well. And when did they lose in the Carabao Cup? Oh, they lost in the third round. Oh, that's interesting. The following season, they were in the Champions League. They lost to Porto. I think that's a little disappointing. I wonder if the team is maybe starting to age out. Let's look and see how someone like Harry Kane is doing. He still looks really good. He's only 31 years old. Still fantastic current and potential ability. Not really the goal scoring season. Still playing really well, but maybe not the goal scoring seasons I was expecting. If we look at their tactics, who is Marcus Leonardo? When did he come in? So, oh, they would have signed him. When did they sign him? They have a global transfer ban. How did they sign Marcus Leonardo? Was there something wrong with the transfer ban? Well, I have no idea what happened there because pretty much every other player in here is exactly the same, but there is two Brazilian players, so I'm not sure how that happened. So they're both starting. I have no idea how that fell through the cracks, but otherwise, England is still pretty much the same team, and I'm a little disappointed with how they're doing. I was honestly expecting a little bit more from them. The Philippines, on the other hand, has sadly dropped down into League One. They lost almost every game in the English Premier Division, and it looks like it was a similar story in the Championship. But they managed to stay up in League One, so I think this is probably a League One level side. Looking at League One and how they did the previous season, overall, they just escaped relegation, I might say, finishing 18th. But it was still enough to keep them up, so it looks like maybe the Philippines national team is around a League One level side. Y'all, maybe we shouldn't talk about the Sky Bet Championship either. Let's just leave that there. So in 3 seasons so far, England has won the Carabao Cup and made the Champions League, even winning a European competition. But I think they still have some room to grow, and the Philippines, unfortunately, has dropped into League One, but it looks like they've settled there. So let's go 5 seasons into the future to the end of the simulation and see how both teams are doing then. Welcome back. We are in 2027, 5 years into the future at the end of the simulation, and let's see how England did in the Premier Division. So last season, they finished fifth, but made the Champions League. So maybe they won something there. The season before, they were in sixth, but they made the Europa League. So maybe they won the Europa League to get in the Champions League. And the season before that, we saw they finished fourth and made the Champions League. So let's look at their history to see what they might have won. 2 UEFA Europa Leagues. I think that says everything we need to know. Another European competition win for England. Sure enough, they beat Villarreal in the UEFA Europa League final last season. Bukayo Saka with the winning pen. And again, pretty much the exact same England team, so no surprises there. The previous season, oh, they made the Champions League semi-final. And they lost to Inter. A little disappointing that they lost to Inter, but I think this is the furthest we'll see them go in the Champions League, so not too bad there. And of course, the previous season, they were knocked out by Porto. So a Champions League semi-final run for England and winning the Europa League final. I think the highest we saw them get in the Premier League was fourth. Again, I was honestly expecting them to do a little bit better, especially with players like Saka, Foden, Mount, Rice, etc., Bellingham. But overall, I think a pretty solid performance from England in the English Premier Division. They did choose Ramsdale over Pickford, but otherwise, it's the team that we were expecting. Oh man, Philippines dropped into Sky Bet League 2. It looks like we did see a relegation, unfortunately. Looking at the senior squad, it looks like, oh, they just got relegated. So they were in Sky Bet League 1 the previous season. Oh, they lost the Papa John's Trophy final. We almost saw a trophy for the Philippines. But the next season, I assume they got knocked out pretty early and eventually getting relegated from Sky Bet League One. So they got into Sky Bet League Two this season. I'm sure some of the players were getting old at this point, so that doesn't surprise me. Looks like we didn't win anything on our way up. Let's look at the league to see how they were doing there. So if we go back to Sky Bet League One to see what might have happened last season. And oh, they got relegated in last. Yeah, I think maybe the players aged out at that point. The previous season, once again, finishing 18th, 2 seasons in a row in League One, but getting relegated in last place. That is sad. I think what might have happened as well is I see that 12 points were deducted. I mean, they would have only finished on 42 and still been relegated, but the players are still on Premier Division salaries. They did have 5-year contracts and they weren't getting Premier League money anymore. So I'm sure that contributed to going into administration from the Philippines. But I think the key player of the save, as we mentioned before, after having looked through the team, was Oscar Arribas. He actually played pretty well, 8 goals in the Sky Bet Championship, and he ended up being a solid League One player. His best season being an 11-goal campaign in the 2025-26 season. So overall, he ended up being the best player for the Philippines, and he looks like he could be a player for the team for years to come. Garrett Holtman also ended up being a solid player. His physicals are still pretty good, even at 32, but his best season was the 2024-25 season when he had a 7.11 overall rating. And again, all of these players end up being about League One quality. And finally, we have Jean-Patrick Strauss, who didn't have a great save, I don't think. I think maybe we were expecting him to do a little bit better, but I think he found his groove in League One. Last season, a 6.84 overall rating. So that's it. That is 5 seasons of the English national team and the Filipino national teams in the English league system. Both teams starting in the Premier Division. We saw England win 2 Europa League titles and make a Champions League semifinal. But unfortunately, we did see the Philippines get relegated, settle into Sky Bet League One before dropping down to League Two in the final season. But that's all I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you all are having a wonderful week, and I will see you all in the next video.